Hi, welcome to this week's Quarantour with Krenice Roseman of Young Black and Lit. We are so lucky to have this conversation and I hope you enjoy it. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's Quarantour. This week, I'm so excited to talk to our friend Krenice Roseman of Young Black and Lit. And I want to just go through her bio real quick here. She's the co-founder of Young Black and Lit, which is an Evanston-based nonprofit. We're so excited about this nonprofit because the mission is to increase access to children's books featuring Black characters, which of course is important because representation matters. Ms. Roseman actually is a lawyer in state government, is her actual job, where she makes all the money. And she graduated summa cum laude from Spelman with a Bachelor of Arts in Sociology, which is fantastic. And we're going to talk a little bit more about how she came to advocacy in a little bit, but she went to law school at NYU, and then she works with the local organization called James B. Moran Center for Youth Advocacy. And of course, like I said, co-founded Young Black and Lit. So let me cancel my spotlight video and spotlight you, Krenice. I'm so happy. Welcome.
Here, thanks for having me.
So where are you coming to us from right now in front of all of those great books?
I am coming to you from my home in Chicago.
Chicago.
All these books are along my wall. I'm losing actual wall space to bookcases, but it's all great.
Yeah, that's awesome. So one of the things that I was mentioning earlier in our private conversation is how we usually start these Quarantours with the question, how did you come to the book arts, or how did you become a writer? But for you, I want to ask, how did you come to this point of advocacy where literacy is concerned? What was your childhood like, and what led you to this position in your life to advocate for children's literacy in this way, and specifically representation in this way? And that's a lot of questions all roped up into one. So go ahead and answer as best as you can.
Take me back. So as a child, I loved reading books, all of that. I could always be found with a book somewhere reading, just because I loved books that kind of took me away to new places, books where I could learn, books about kids my age. I just have always loved reading, and that has continued with me throughout my entire life, even as an adult. Today, I've just always been connected to books, and especially books that resonated with me and my personal experience. Actually, during the whole pandemic quarantine, working remotely, I've been revisiting a lot of books that I read when I was much younger. So books that I read in high school, and those books that I've kind of reconnected with, I realize are all books that center Black women in their stories. So I feel like I've always kind of just had this interest in representation, especially as it relates to literacy. But as a child, like I said, I just have always loved books.
Yeah.
So literacy has just always been an important area for me in my learning. But I should mention the books that I've revisited, if that's for anyone.
I know, I was going to ask you, I'm so curious as to what those books are that you've reread in this time of COVID, because please have at it. Book recommendations are always good. And I'm just curious as to your response. And also when you're talking about them, maybe mention when you actually read them as a child too, like middle school, high school, whatever. So yeah, please tell us more.
So the three books I've revisited in the last month were actually books that I read first in high school, I believe, were first introduced to me in high school. The first being The Color Purple by Alice Walker.
Oh, yeah.
I literally just finished that a few days ago, and then rewatched the movie just to see what what the differences were that I could recall. But I love that book, Beloved by Toni Morrison.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston.
Sorry.
Happens to be one of my favorite books of all time. So it was
Yeah.
just interesting to me that those were the books I was going back to. I think during, the pandemic, there's I feel like everybody's feeling nostalgic, and obviously because we're missing a time before.
Yeah. So, so you went back to these three books in particular in the last month. And when do you recall back in the day when you read them for the first time, how they made you feel to connect with these main characters, and how that power, I'm assuming, I'm just saying, for my own experience, the power of reading something that you have a deep resonation, that resonates with you personally. And those are three really powerful books to begin with. So can you speak a little, I'm jumping way ahead in the conversation, but can you speak a little bit to that, as to what your reaction was when you were a child in high school, or, young woman in high school reading them? And then, yeah, because, oh my God, Beloved, I need to reread. I reread it about 10 years ago, and I haven't reread for a while, but just, ugh.
I mean, I distinctly remember reading Beloved probably in my English class, either junior or senior year of high school. And actually, I went to Evanston Township High School, graduated from there in 2002. And I remember my English teacher at the time introducing that book to us to read, and being just kind of blown away at the brilliance of Toni Morrison, at the story and the layers of it. I don't feel like I fully understood or even appreciated
Of course.
everything I was supposed to capture from that book in my first read. But I distinctly remember being kind of just like writing like this exists, like this.
Exactly.
Writing like this that can kind of stretch your mind to think about concepts in a way that you've never thought about before. And like I said, all of these books for me really centered the experiences of Black women in the storytelling. And especially in high school, that was important for me because I was, as many high schoolers are, just kind of figuring out where I was positioned in this world, where my next step would be after high school. And I ended up going to an all Black women's college. And so it just really challenged me, I remember in high school, to just really think about what those identities meant to me, how powerful they were in my life experience, and how meaningful it was for me to have opportunity to read stories about Black women by Black women, that were speaking to, things I was grappling with as a teenager at the time.
Yeah.
Really powerful.
It's really, really powerful. And I love that. Can you, back to your growing up, let me go to this question of, wait a minute, I thought I had a question of, oh, I do. So can you talk a little bit more about your path to this? We know reading is important to you personally, and those meaningful moments in your life and current life where you're reading and books just hit you in the gut and you really, really connect with. Can you talk a little bit about not just the literacy aspect of your advocacy with young people, as well as being a lawyer too? How did growing up in Evanston help you develop that idea of advocacy and activism that led you to this point of young Black and lit? Like how I'm trying to articulate the question that I have, but I feel like Evanston is an interesting community because we have so many fantastic opportunities at the high school for sure. But as you and I were speaking, you went to Shoot, which is, we also mentioned that I think that's the best middle school in the entire city of Evanston. And it just is phenomenal. And I'm sure it was phenomenal when you went to Shoot. But how did growing up in Evanston, again, speculation, create this idea in your soul versus maybe growing up in Chicago, or versus maybe growing up in the South? Like, this is, again, a speculation, but do you think that it made a difference for you to be here in this particular city?
Absolutely. So Evanston, like you said, is a very interesting community. There are, especially at the high school, vast opportunities, resources for students there. But Evanston is also a very segregated community, which was true when I was, a child growing up in Evanston, and is true now.
Yeah.
And so even when I was in, AP classes at ETHS, being one of maybe two Black students in the classroom, you realize that there are differences, right?
Yeah.
And that while Evanston presents itself and oftentimes does come through to demonstrate that it is truly a town that is welcoming and open and progressive and embraces diversity, we know that for certain communities, in particular the Black community at Evanston, those ideals don't always ring true in the experience that we have in Evanston. And so
there's a disconnect there in a lot of ways for a lot of people.
Absolutely. And so I think it can't help but impact the way my life view, my perspective was shaped, how I viewed the world, how I approached advocacy, because I became very aware early on as a child that there was something, important about my identity as a Black girl.
Okay.
That it was something I paid attention to. It was something that I was aware of. And I think that's especially true in a community that outwardly presents itself as very, like I said, open, welcoming, diverse, progressive, knowing that certain inequities still exist. Because I think oftentimes when we think about and we talk about, the education gaps, wealth gaps, racial disparities, we tend to focus in on cities, communities where the difference between the two is more stark, I guess.
Right.
We focus less so on those disparities in communities that outwardly present as progressive. And so that creates, I think, a mindset in Black and brown children in particular, I think, where they continue to see inequities, but they also see progressiveness. And how do you reconcile those two things? How do you reconcile your experience with kind of the rhetoric? And you see from family members, from yourself, that Black folks, poor folks in the community tend to not have access to the same resources or opportunities, even though they abundantly exist, or they have experiences, whether it be experiences with, the education system, teachers, police, things of that nature. So I think growing up in Evanston certainly has impacted the way in which I view and approach the world, and my advocacy in it, making sure, as coming down the line to how Young Black and Lit was developed, having a real interest in emphasis on how my community in particular is represented.
Yeah. So let's go to that point of Young Black and Lit. So how did you come to, okay, lots of questions. When was it founded? Who's your founding partner? And how did it come about, and specifically in Evanston, that this organization was founded for Evanston to start, and then now you're moving to Chicago schools? But tell us about Young Black and Lit.
Yeah, so Young Black and Lit was founded in 2018, so we're still relatively young, new organization, and it really was founded out of my own frustration. So every year I have a niece who's now 8. I better get because if she sees this, she's gonna be like, "I'm not 8." So she's 8. That's right. And every year for her birthday, I try to get her books along with something fun.
Of course.
And so a couple of years ago, she obviously then was, I guess, 6 at that time and learning to read, starting really to learn to read and be interested in books, was trying to find books that had little Black girls on the cover, were the center of the story. And so I was running late on getting her a gift. So I just popped into a bookstore in Evanston and was like, let me just go in here and see if I can find a book, a couple of books, and started searching. Didn't see any with little Black girls or Black boys for that matter. Talked to a sales associate who was there. It's like, I'm looking for books that specifically highlight, little Black girls in this, age range. And they were very honest with me. I'm like, we don't have a ton of those books here. The majority of the books that were there, focused on animals. And if there were centered in, human children, they were children who did look nothing like my, beautiful dark-skinned Black niece. And so I left from there not finding any books and just being generally very frustrated by that experience, saddened by it, because I realized, as an adult, I realized for her, and it's certainly true when I was a child also, but I didn't process it in that way. I was saddened by the fact that there were spaces, in particular spaces that I love, full of books, things that could expand your mind and take you away on journeys, spaces that she would walk into and not feel seen. She would see herself in the books, and that lets you know that space wasn't designed for you. It wasn't designed with you in mind. It wasn't designed with your experience, your culture, your background, your family in mind. And so subconsciously that can make you feel like that space is unwelcoming. And I don't feel like any bookstore, any place that's supposed to create, be an abundance of learning and access to learning should be designed in a way that isn't inclusive and that doesn't think about the vast diversity of the world we live in. So after you kind of, going into deep thought about that experience, I decided, I'm just going to find a few books and make a donation to, at the time, I think my first donation was to Family Focus. It was only like 25 books. I put it on, I made a wish list online. I'm like, hey, just to family and friends, I'm looking to donate books featuring Black girls to Family Focus. And they got a really good reception. People were like, oh, this is a great idea. Like, I'll contribute some money towards the books. I made that donation, and I ended up talking to my now fiance. He's like, well, you should do Little Black Boys next. And so I'm like, sure. Did the same thing, got the same reaction, a really, really good reaction. And then talking to him more, he's like, I think this could be something more. I think it should grow into an organization or a nonprofit. Like, we can do more here. Because if you're having this frustration and experience, and obviously I don't have any kids, so it was based on my niece. It's like, I'm sure other parents, other people interested in literacy would appreciate being able to have someone who does the research to find these books, since they're not always easily found, especially, as I said, walking into like a brick and mortar store, and have access to them. And so that's kind of how the idea started growing from there. And since I'm from Evanston, it just made sense for me to, and my niece, she actually goes to King Arts. It made sense for me to want to start it in the community that, nurtured me. So that's how I got started in Evanston.
Yeah, and so because we have people coming in from all over the country on our Zooms, and I noticed a lot of people from out of town on here today. Family Focus is an organization here in Evanston in the 5th Ward. Their building is in the 5th Ward, but they serve a lot of the community around Evanston. Can you talk a little bit about why you chose Family Focus to be your first focus for the donation? And then are you still partnering with them quite a bit?
So the reasons I chose Family Focus are for the reasons you just articulated, is that they're based in the 5th Ward, which serves, a large portion of the African American community in Evanston. And so it was important to me that that be the first place where I get the books, my first set of books too, because they were servicing the children who I felt like it was most important to have access to those books. So that's why I chose them first. And we haven't actually, I'm trying to think, we may have made one or two more monthly donations to Family Focus, but we haven't, since we moved to partnering more directly with the schools, we haven't had a long-standing partnership with Family Focus as of yet.
Yeah. So how long has Young Black and Lit been in existence?
Just for 2 years, since 2000.
Just for 2 years. Oh my gosh, I thought it was longer because of the work that you have done and just knowing what you have already accomplished. I thought it was way longer. I just have goosebumps. That's phenomenal. Oh my gosh.
We're small, young, and scrappy. So we're trying to do a lot of work.
A lot of work. And how much work do you say, like, because you work for the state government as a lawyer, which is a huge job in and of itself, like multiple thousands of hours a week. So how do you devote time to Young Black and Lit? How do you balance the two with your nonprofit, with your job?
Yeah, so it's a lot of work, and we have a small team. We're looking to grow our board, and our team. We have a nice team of volunteers that support us, but it's a lot of work after work. So signing out the day job that pays me, and then signing on to Young Black and Lit to continue to do the work. But the whole team is super passionate about the work, and so it feels meaningful, especially at a time right now where the country is experiencing uprisings across the country and a renewed focus on Black lives in particular. It feels purposeful. And so, the many hours that go into making these donations and partnerships and figuring out our next moves feels worth it. So it doesn't feel as stressful as it could be.
Yeah, it's more a passion project. And actual, wonderful work, of course, and it's work, but it's more of your heart and soul work.
Exactly.
I'm gathering that from you. So one of the things that I wanted to mention also, and to just touch upon, is when you have your sessions in school, or I remember being at the library and you would come in with tables of books for free for kids. How do you set those up, and what has to happen in the community for you to be able to have those events?
So a lot in the beginning for us, a lot of us getting into, for example, Evanston Public Library, we've been there the last 2 years for their Martin Luther King Jr. celebration. It's been community people finding out about what we do and connecting us with these organizations. So Evanston Public Library found out about the work that we're doing, reached out to us and invited us in, asked how we would like to participate in that celebration. And we said, hey, we could come, we could set up and have free books for the children who are there enjoying the celebration to browse and take one. And how we've kind of grown organically. Even I remember that first Evanston Public Library event, a parent from, I want to say Oakton, came up to the table and was like, you have to come to my child's school. Like, it just has to happen. And I think that from there we met with the PTA president who connected us with Dr. Allen, and then that partnership grew, that relationship grew, and we did several, we had like a pop-up book fair at Oakton during the school day one day. We piloted our Lit Year program where we were giving one book per month to Oakton students at the beginning of this year. In their ACC, I want to say, I think it was kindergarten through second grade classrooms at the beginning of the year, thanks to a grant from the Evanston Community Foundation. So it's been those community connections, organizations that have helped us grow, just word of mouth, people finding out about us and being like, hey, you should make a connection with this organization, with this school, or come here and bring your books. So there's a real interest in the work that we're doing, which is exciting.
Yeah, that is exciting. And I'm really hopeful, because we're a brand new organization, a brand new nonprofit, and I'm hopeful that we can connect and make things happen with your group as well in the future. We don't have a space. We don't really have much until we find out about Harley Clark, but I want to definitely partner with you on
Absolutely.
things, a lot of things. We got a lot of things we can do.
Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about books.
Yeah.
I know you had pulled some wonderful books off of that gorgeous shelf behind you to show us and to have as recommendations. So let's start there. I'm going to spotlight your video so that you are spotlighted. Hold on. And then, wait, before we do this, can you talk a little bit, do you mostly work K-5 or are you all the way up to 8th? Are you all the way up to high school? Are you hoping to expand if you're only in certain grades, or do you think pre-K or all the ages?
So
I forgot to ask that.
We are pre-K through 8th grade. So we have a monthly donation program where organizations, schools can sign up to receive a book donation from us each month. And for that, we focus on pre-K through 8th grade. For our lit year program that we're planning to roll out this school year, and I should explain, the lit year program is we'll be providing kindergarten students in participating schools with one book per month for the entire school year, plus an additional 5 books at the end of the school year for summer reading.
Wow.
For that, we'll be focusing on kindergarten, pre-K through 3rd grade, because as you mentioned, I'm a lawyer. So as I've come to learn more about the literacy space, I understand that the kindergarten through 3rd grade time is especially important for children and their academic achievement, their reading achievement, because that's the time that children are really focused on learning how to read.
Yeah.
And then after 3rd grade, it shifts to focusing on reading to learn. And so if you are not, if you don't really have access to books during that earlier childhood age group, or you really haven't learned the principles of reading, it can be really difficult to make that shift to reading to learn. And so we thought it would be important, since we're simply just trying to increase access to representative books, to focus in on that K through 3 age group for our lit year program, and make sure we are just building the at-home libraries of as many children as we can, starting with kindergartners.
Yeah.
So that's our focus right now.
Yeah. And so lit year is a new program that you started this spring at Oakton, right? And you got a grant. So let me just talk about this a little bit with the remote learning aspect of the school year, because we're starting remote learning until we don't know when that's going to end. So are you able to deliver the books to people's homes? Are you trying to figure out, do you need more volunteers? Are you trying to figure that whole thing out?
So
how is that going to work with, because you can't take the books into the school and distribute them, or are they going to be a lunchtime? Because of course D65 is still going to do lunch distribution. So will it be, there's a lot of questions again, I'm sorry. So I do this. Everybody on here knows, if they've been here before, I ask like 10 questions in one.
So when we started at Oakton at the top of the year, obviously the pandemic hadn't really hit yet. So we were delivering the books to the school, and the teachers would distribute them in their classroom.
Right.
Once we shifted into remote learning, we were able to get the addresses of the participating students, and we started shipping the books. We actually, for Oakton, we put all the books, it was maybe 6 books, I think, that were left to complete their lit year. We shipped that set of books to each student.
As a package.
Yeah. As a package. And so actually we did a little pop-up this summer for Juneteenth at Yo Fresh, and we were at C&W Market, and a parent from Oakton actually stopped by, and she was like, I just want to say, I really appreciated getting that set of books at the time that I did, because it just really gave us, a foundation to just keep my child reading once they were at home. She's like, I just, really appreciated getting that set of books.
Oh, that's great.
So we were excited about that. And I think as we approach this new school year of remote learning, the the plan is to be able to ship the books directly to the homes of the students each month, so that they have them in hand, they can add them to their at-home library, and that doesn't require them coming to pick up or us going to drop off. It'll just be delivered to them.
Yeah, that seems easier for the entire process.
Yeah.
How many kids are you hoping to serve this school year in Evanston with the lit program, with the lit year? I'm sorry, not just Young Black and lit year. How many are you hoping to serve?
We're starting with kindergarten students, and the plan is hopefully to keep them in the program through third grade, and they'll end up with like 60 books from us by the end of their third grade year. We're hoping to hit every Evanston elementary school. So we're still rolling in participating schools, so we don't have full participation yet, but that's the goal.
I love that. That's fantastic. And so for those of you who are on the Zoom right now and who are watching the Quarantour once we post it on YouTube, you can donate to this program, this very specific lit year program, at Young Black and Lit website. It's www.youngblackandlit.org/donate, and that's all spelled out. That's not with the ampersand. So you can they make a note on their donation that it's for lit year, or is it just general donations? Do you have a separate donation form for lit year?
The current donation form that's up now is specifically for the lit year campaign.
Okay, and so go ahead and send some money their way if you can afford to. If you want to help our town get more books into the hands of young children, into those little hands, then that would be great. So now let's talk books.
Now let's talk.
Yeah, go ahead.
No problem. I just randomly pulled a few down just to talk about the types of books that we try to find and read and curate, because what we found in our kind of reaching out to different organizations, we've heard that a lot of the books children tend to get in school and out of school, for that matter, tend to be focused a lot more on civil rights and history books, and not necessarily
stories.
And so we certainly believe that, books about Black history, books about Black historical figures are extremely important and should be incorporated into every child's kind of library and reading. We know that that's not the full experience of Black folks, Black culture, Black community. So we have a mix of probably a few of these are high, like the Preaching to the Chickens book.
I saw that over
John
your shoulder.
Lewis. We have March by John Lewis behind us. So we certainly have those types of books in our inventory, in our book bank. But we also try to find the books that tell the wide range of experiences of Black children. The, ordinary, average story about a child who likes a bug or something like that. Like a story that isn't rooted in trauma, that isn't rooted in kind of historical lessons. Just average, everyday stories about
just a story.
Just a story.
Yeah.
So a couple of the books I pulled. One of my favorites here, The Day You Begin.
The Day You Begin.
Yes. And obviously is, a rock star anyway. Yeah. But books like this, where it's just a story about trying to figure out your place in a new environment. So starting school and seeing that there are different people and you may look different and your food may be different from your family. The lunch you bring might smell a little different, or your hair might be a little different. But just trying to figure out that everyone belongs, and that, any space you enter is a space you deserve to be in. So I think that's just one of the books that has like a really important special message for children, highlighting children from different backgrounds.
Yeah, I love that book. There's a comment in the chat from Maria, who is a librarian actually up in Wisconsin, and she says, Preaching to the Chickens is excellent, and it is. It's an excellent story. And John Lewis, rest in peace. I love that man. So can you pull up the Jacqueline Woodson again and show us some of the page spreads? Because I just think the art in this one also, in addition to, of course, her gorgeous writing is just so beautiful. And the way the artist has illustrated this is so, you know, you can see the insecurity, you can see the beauty, it's just a good one. That's just such a good one.
It is.
Yeah.
One.
I love that book. Yeah.
Good.
Yay.
That one's fantastic. Let's see, another one here. This one is a newer one. This one is called Bedtime Bonnet by Nancy Red. And I like this one just because it is a story about a very specific Black culture experience, especially for children who identify as girls, who, you know, put the bonnet on with their mom at the end of the night to protect their hair hairstyle. It speaks to like the bonding experience of that, and it's a uniquely Black experience. And so it's stories like these that I love too, that are just regular average stories, something, you know, you do every day as a child, possibly when you're getting ready for bed at night, but not every child has that same experience with their hair or with the hair ritual. And so I love this one too, just sharing a story about that bonding experience between mother and child at the end of the night, and just what that means to see this, you know, like I said, very unique experience about how we take care of our hair at night being told in a story, in a fun story.
I love that. And that also presents the family story, the home story, which isn't always presented in a light that kids, you know, I don't know exactly how I'm going to say this or how to say this, but a lot of people may not have the same understanding or an understanding of Black families because they might have a stereotype in their mind, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. I mean, and that's why representation is so important. Sharing these varied stories, because not all of our families look the same. Not all of our family experiences are the same. So the more that you're exposed to different family types, different seeing loving representations of Black families.
Yes, that's what I meant. I think that's what I meant. Yeah.
And popular media. I think it's and I know, you know, the education scholars on here, I'm sure are familiar with like the mirrors and windows concept when it comes to literacy and reading. This idea that when children are able to see themselves in the books that they read, they feel valued, they see their culture, they feel that their culture and their family experience is respected and valued. And then those books also serve as mirrors to allow other children to get a glimpse into experiences and backgrounds that are different from theirs. And it helps them to develop empathy and understanding about the things that make us, that are similar between us, and celebrate those beautiful differences that we have as well.
Exactly. And I love that. And I think more grown-ups need to read these books as well.
Certainly.
I feel like that would be an incredible, powerful experience to have a grown-up read these books. So let's look over your shoulder real quick. I know you have more in the pile because I love the pile, but Melissa's asking about the book right behind your shoulder, I'm Trying to Love Rocks.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so can you pull that down and tell us about that book?
Sure. It's just a book about geology. And a child who's discovering all new facts about rocks, who's not really excited about the concept of geology. I was not excited about geology when I was a child either, but it's basically just learning about all of these facts that kind of widen your mind to be like, geology might be kind of okay, might be kind of fun to learn about. So, for example, this says, really? Geology is more than just staring at rocks? And so then it just goes into all of these fun, interesting facts about geology and growing to love a subject that you might not have necessarily had any interest in when you were first introduced to it. It's just more like educational science type book.
And what's important about this book is that the child who is in the story is a young Black girl, it looks like.
Yes.
And that is what is important about this book, because it centers that character learning about this thing and opens it wide up. Yeah.
Exactly.
I love that.
Just for girls in particular, where, traditionally the message is that girls are not really interested in STEM or science.
Right.
So yeah, it's a good book that centers a Black girl learning interesting new facts and growing some excitement about science.
I love that. And what else is in your pile there?
Oh, I just had a couple more I have. So this is a board book, Hey Black Child, really an affirmation for Black children about knowing who you are, and being confident in who you are and what you can be in this world, that I really, really like. Also has some really
that is gorgeous. Yeah, look at those lines across. Oh my gosh. Okay, book artist here, but I'm looking at the way that the book is having those lines shoot across. That's just so great. The spotlight, the whole thing, the curve of the letters.
Yeah, this is a fun one to read to the little ones. Another one. This one, the last one I have over here, although I could pull plenty more. This one's Crown.
Oh, I love this book.
One.
Yes.
I picked this one just because I love reading it to children, because they enjoy like how certain things are said about, how the girl checks him out and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So they really respond to the reading of this book. And it also has just the imagery, I think, is really great.
It is. This is a stunning book. I love this book. Yeah. And that one was one that was on the reading list, I think, at the D65 reading list. I can't remember which year it was. Melissa says, I love this. So sweet.
Yeah, this one's a fun one. Like I said, if you haven't read it before, you should just grab a copy. Not only to just look at like the illustration I love, but it's a fun one to read, because it's just about how, you start feeling yourself after you get your brush cut and your hair done. You feel good and confident. So it's all about how that can make you feel good after you get yourself cleaned up.
Yeah, I love that one, especially for young men, of course, these young boys, especially for them. So can you pull a couple for the middle grades and upper grades that you work with, the 8th graders and such? And I also want to plug a little bit. We have a wonderful, wonderful young woman who's a sophomore at ETHS who just started our very first Artist Bookhouse book group. And it's the Pandemic Book Club for young women and female identifying and non-binary kids. And it's the first book they read was Jacqueline Woodson, Brown Girl Dreaming.
I was just about to highlight that one.
I know, I was going to say, do you have that on your shelf so we can talk about that one? Yeah, it's so exciting. And then they had their first session last weekend, and it was just like I wanted Sophia Blunt is the young woman's name, and I wanted her to be the leader entirely, because it was important for me to have her own book group. She was the one who wanted to do it, so we wanted her to have that space. So I just set up the Zoom and I muted everything and just put my computer off to the side, but every once in a while I would unmute and just kind of listen in, and just the discussion was gorgeous. It was great. And the next book they voted on was Trevor Noah's Born a Crime. So yeah, bring those both out and talk about those, but also anything else that you can mention for older kids.
Yeah.
Then if you have any recommendations, because again, Sophia is running this book group, so I want her to have her group choose the books, but if you have any recommendations at all, then maybe email those to us.
Oh yeah, I will.
But yeah, pull those out and talk about them.
No, so the Jacqueline Woodson book, that we're big fans of her over here.
Yeah.
Brown Girl Dreaming, I love. It's in prose. It's really about her childhood, growing up in the 60s and 70s, and it's really powerful. I think a really powerful read. So if they've read that one, they're already on the right track. A popular book now, since, like I said, we're in this kind of renewed time of racial awareness and discussion about racism, the Stamp book, Jason Reynolds is also a fave of mine. So a couple of his books also. Ghost is a popular one for us. So read all of Jason Reynolds' books too.
Yes, absolutely. 100%.
This book is kind of written for the teenager in mind. So talking about race concepts for younger readers.
Yeah.
This is a good one, just relevant to the time that we're in now.
And it's also his co-writer on that is Kendi, right?
Yes, Kendi.
I saw that on there. So, okay, we have a couple questions and comments in the chat to interrupt you real quick. So Sophia, our lovely young woman who's leading our gorgeous pandemic book group for these young women and female identifying people, 13 to 17 is their age. So her mother is actually on here, Melissa Blunt, and she says, I want Sophia to meet Krenice. And then she's also asking, can we order books from you? Is that a possibility? Do you have your bookshop? Do you have a bookshop set up?
Yep, our bookstore is online as well. So it's youngblackandlit.org. If you go there, our bookstore is there, and you can buy all of the books behind me and the ones I've shown you so far should be on our bookstore for purchase, because that's another way that we fund our work of donating the books for free in the community is through our bookstore sales. All that money goes to support giving the books away for free in the community. Okay, so let's talk after our quarantine real quick. Don't jump off yet when we're done, because I haven't put out the Eventbrite and the announcement for next month's Pandemic Book Club yet. So maybe we could have Trevor Noah be through you. Okay. Although I do think they're reading the adult version. I'm not sure. Okay. Yeah, because I think we might have the one that's the young adult version. Right now for the young adult. Yep. Yeah. So but let's talk anyway. So yeah, do you have any more to show us? We have about 11 minutes left, so I want to use your time well. There's a younger. So they're, in like the early reader, like second, third grade, they're just starting to get into chapter books type. And I know like Junie B. Jones is popular with that group, but we found like Jada Jones. Oh yeah, I love those. Similar like early reader chapter books, they still have like pictures in them. So they're easier chapter books. And they're centering the young Black girl. I love that. So like this one's Sleepover Scientist. This one's Dancing Queen. We have there's like a Keena Ford series, also same kind of age group that features a little Black girl. And then we have El Ray Jakes, Jake the Fake. Those center little Black boys in the stories, and they're also series. So those are really fun. They tend to second and third grade, we tend to like those a lot. And then we also get requests for graphic novels. So we have March here that I mentioned earlier, which is fantastic. So we also have up here The New Kid. That's a popular one. We have, and if Jared's still on, Kwame Alexander, crossover. We have that in the graphic novel form. Kwame Alexander, another favorite of ours. Absolutely. And then there's, this one here is like, I can show. It's close to me here. Monster Mayhem. This is like a younger graphic novel one. Oh, I love that. Yeah, so we're trying to hit all the interests here, because some kids are like, do you have a comic book or a graphic novel? Yeah. And yeah, there's another comment in the chat. Dawn says he just started Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler, whose voice seems completely unique in the sci-fi genre. It is. It is. And he says, I love how her character Lauren becomes a lit advocate for her friends Josie. Have you read that one? You've read it. Have you read any Octavia Butler? I've read some. I haven't read that one though. No. Yeah, that one's supposed to. I haven't read it either. But it's supposed to be like because it's a start to a sci-fi series, and it's Octavia Butler, and it's awesome. But I haven't read it yet. But yeah. So just that comment. And then Melissa says it's fantastic. I'm gonna have to grab it. There we go. So
We have about 9 more minutes left. If anybody has any more questions, maybe I'll open it up to unmute and talk. Let me cancel the spotlight video here. Thank you so much for being here for this conversation with Krenice Roseman of Young Black and Lit. It was such an incredible discussion, and we got so many great book recommendations. I'm happy to report that we're hoping to partner with Young Black and Lit a little bit more in the future. And if you would like to donate to Artist Book House, please go to our website and donate at least $5. We can really use the help. Thank you so much.